In 1823, a student by the name of William Webb Ellis created the game rugby while attending the school of rugby. During a game of soccer, he picked up the ball and ran with it. Even though it's against the rules, many people agreed with it and continued with the tradition. They had a meeting at a Freemason tavern later on in the years to see if they could make rugby a real sport. However, there was two sides, one opposing and one for, which led to the creation of rugby and separation of soccer. In 1845, rugby got the first set of rules, where 3 clubs met to write them. Not all clubs followed the rules, leading to a very dangerous and unorganized sport. In 1870, Rugby Football Union was formed in order to tidy up and safen the league. And in 1874, the first United States game was held with Harvard versus McGill. In 1880, countries started to make their own rules, even though they are part of the rugby union. In 1890, the rugby union some clubs started paying their team members who had missed work in order to play for the games, which is not allowed, therefore leading to 22 of the clubs in the union to succeed and form the Northern Union, which was later known to call the Rugby League. Rugby was a very popular sport in the United States up until 1924, when it was cut from the Olympics, and it's starting to gain some more popularity now, but not as popular as it in Europe.
Since rugby has been invented, it's gone through many changes throughout its time. The first of which was that it was a fairly unorganized sport. It had no rules established. It wasn't until 1871 when the Rugby Football Union established the first 59 laws of rugby, making it more of an organized sport. The second was actually the size of the ball. The size of the ball was first made by a man named Richard London and William Gilbert, using 4-panel casings and pig bladders. It wasn't until 1892 when regulations and rules were established on the size of the ball, making it more of an oval shape. The third thing that eventually changed was that they originally had 15-man teams, but then the new version of rugby actually requires 7 people. This is more popular among colleges because it's supposed to be more appealing to the spectators and more exciting. The fourth is the fact that women's rugby is getting more recognition now. Originally it's supposed to be a men's sport or a boys' sport in college, but now with women's sport being more popular among spectators, women's rugby is becoming more recognized as a sport.
One of the most influential male players in rugby is a man named Stephen Larkham. He played in the Australian Rugby Union and retired as one of the best fly halves in world rugby. His reputation as an elusive runner, the linchpin of a opponent backline, and effective team player all contributed to him being inducted into the Sports Australia Hall of Fame. Another influential rugby player goes by the name of Johnny Wilkinson. He has won the Rugby World Cup and the Power Gym Cup 2 times. He holds the record for the overall top point scorer and the world record for international points. An influential woman in rugby goes by the name of Emily Valentine. She is labeled as the First Lady of Rugby. She has memoirs that she has written and gives details on her playing in the schoolyard and her feelings on how they didn't want to let her play at first, but then she begged and begged and they let her play. So she was the first woman to ever play rugby.
The article I chose to do our presentation on is titled Effective of Rugby Headgear in Preventing Soft Tissue Injuries to the Head. The objective of this study was determined is to see if headgear worn by rugby players would reduce the risk of head and facial lacerations, abrasions, and fractures. The method they used for this study was they chose 64 participants to take a survey. 64 rugby players participated in this study. They took a survey which included the position they played, if they wore headgear, and location of injury. Also, nurses added clinical data which include verification of injury locations. From the study, they concluded that rugby players who wore headgear had less facial and head injuries. Also, headgear reduced the risk of bleeding to the face and head in the front, but not in the back of their head. Also, there is a higher risk of facial injuries amongst forward position players.
For one scholarly research paper on rugby and one subdiscipline, I decided on strength and conditioning. According to the Strength and Conditioning Journal by Greg von Felter, rugby is the sport that requires elements of strength, power, agility, and endurance into a game with very minimal protective padding. Because the sport's contact can precipitate certain injuries, strength conditioning is very important. You may think that rugby is more dangerous, but overall the injury rate for rugby football is no higher than basketball, football, or even soccer. This article discusses several exercises to strengthen the cervical spine musculature to help reduce the risk of injury and aid performance for many rugby players.
Alright, after discussing with the rugby players, you might notice that they have really big legs and big upper bodies. So when they informed me that they use 3 power lifts to gain that extra strength and power in their conditioning cycles. So the first one is bench press. Once you're laying flat on the bench, once you grab the bar out, they have told me that they want to inhale when you come down to your chest, so and then explode out. So that's how each they do one rep is out. And the main muscles that the bench press works are anterior deltoids, triceps, and pectoralis. The second power lift that they do, primarily for lower body, is the squat. So they take the barbell and they're going to place it on top of their traps, like this. You want to keep your back straight and your chest out. So you're going to go down. Your feet are going to eventually be pointed out. They're going to end up pointed out. So again, that's a squat, and it works quads, hamstrings, and glutes. Right, the third important power lift that they do is again with lower body. It's called deadlift. So barbells on the ground next to your shins. And you're going to grab it, looking up, back straight again. And you're going to pull it up and stand up. 1. And your chest is going to be pointed out. So again, down, stand up, drop it. Down, stand up, drop it. And this exercise works the same as a squat, hamstrings, quads, and glutes.
Rugby is a high-intensity, high-impact sport. According to the Strength and Conditioning Journal, most cervical spine injuries occur during the tackling phase of the game. This is both due to poor tackling technique and improper head positioning. Research has shown by adding muscle mass to both the cervical spine and shoulder will help aid in preventing injury. These 3 progressive exercises will train the muscles isometrically in order to stabilize the cervical spine during impact. The first exercise is the wall bridging, the second the wrestling bridge, and lastly the neck exercise progression. The athlete should not progress to the next exercise unless he or she is able to maintain a stable neck position in that particular exercise for at least 10 repetitions for 10 to 30 seconds with apparent ease. The upper trapezius should also be trained isometrically by doing upright rows to chest height, along with the shoulder girdle exercises such as chest bench presses and dips. This has dealt with the subdiscipline strength and conditioning.
As we all know, rugby is a contact sport that offers a lack of protection equipment for players. So it's not surprising that it's also one of the highest injury rates in organized sports. There was a research done at a university level by Peter Richmond, and it was published in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine. It involved 354 college students in a 2-day rugby tournament. Out of the 354 students, 20 were injured and received medical attention at a healthcare facility. Injuries treated and evaluated on the field was not reported. The research found that concussion was the most common injury, and it occurred 20% of the time. Overall, injury to the neck and head was about 30%. The most common injury to the bone occurred in the upper extremities, and the most common fracture is in the clavicles. In other studies that involved senior rugby players or professionals, the results were similar. They included sprains to the knees and fractures to the phalanges. Injury rate is also 1 in every 60 playing hours. The annual rate of spinal cord injuries is also on the rise. The most common injury is to the cervical spine between the C4 and C7 vertebrae. This occurs when a player wraps his arm around his opponent's head from the side and applies a rotational and flexion force when tackling. Although spinal injuries are on the rise and devastating, it is not the most observed injury in rugby.
So I asked a couple rugby guys about their daily nutrition and their pre and post workout.
Before like weightlifting workouts and stuff like that, we usually take like a pre-workout, and then afterwards just take some like a muscle milk or something like that, and then try to keep a lot of protein in our diet so we can build more muscles and keep strong.
Alright, so basically I eat a high protein diet, a lot of eggs, I eat carbs too, potatoes, protein shakes, I take amino acids after workouts, and then I just sleep a lot to recover.
Alright, so every morning, no matter what, I always have 2 eggs for breakfast. So I'll have like 2 eggs and waffles, or eggs and weenies, or just anything with protein to add more to the eggs. You know, tortilla, bread, just like nice balanced breakfast, orange juice or milk, sometimes water, depending on what I'm in the mood for. Afternoon, I mean, it changes, depends if I made a lunch or brought a lunch, but I mean, anything from like, you know, sandwich with ham and turkey, and cheese, mayo, mustard. I really don't like cut anything out of my diet. I never diet. I probably have a horrible diet or nutrition, but with all the working out I do, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter because nutrition is key. So, and then dinner time, it just depends. But any kind of like, there's always going to be a protein portion and some kind of rice or some kind of a side dish that's going to like accentuate that. So, when it comes to working out, you know, I like to take a protein shake 30 minutes before I go to the gym, then I hit the gym, and then when I'm done with the gym, I take another protein shake after, just for recovery. And it's pretty much all I use for supplements.